colors and patterns put into words that stream across the page, capturing life as soft-spoken lyric screams.
Hey everybody, Jane here, and I am doing a review of 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. This was a book I actually read for a mystery book club, and I really enjoyed it overall. We're going to get into that. But this book is about a guy named Malcolm who is a partial owner of a bookstore, a mystery bookstore. And for the blog, to promote the bookstore, he wrote a blog post called 8 Perfect Murders, and he listed books that he felt were perfect murders. I'm going to read you the list. The list was The Red House Mystery by A.M. Malign, Malice Aforethought by Anthony Berkeley Cox, The ABC Murders by Agatha Christie, Double Indemnity by James M. Cain, Strangers on a Train by Patricia Highsmith, The Drowner by John McDonald, Death Trap by Ira Levine, and The Secret History by Donna Tartt. So, a FBI agent comes to him and says, somebody is following these books and committing murders, and we think they have some kind of connection to you. They obviously read your blog post at the very least. So is there anyone you could think of who might be committing these murders? And so Malcolm has to help investigate these murders, but of course things are not always what they seem, and there's a ton of twists, turns, and complication in the book. So I'm going to start with some non-spoiler section thoughts, give it a rating, and then go into some spoilers, which is typically how I do book reviews. I want to give people an opportunity to hear my thoughts on a book, but not to go into anything that might spoil it for them until a little bit later. So my initial thoughts on the book were, it was interesting. I listened to it as an audiobook, and I really enjoyed the majority of it. Around disc 6, and it's a 7-disc, it was 7 discs for me, from my library. Around disc 6, I started going, oh, I'm not sure I like this anymore. And then the end came, and I was like, oh, I don't know. And we had a long discussion about it in book club, and it definitely had some complicated feelings and thoughts and mixed reviews from everyone who read it. I think it was interesting. I love books about literature. It does spoil some things in those books if you've never read them. So if you don't like spoilers, this may not be a good book for you unless you've read all of those books. There are also spoilers for The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, also an Agatha Christie. And there were some other spoilers as well, but that was like the one that really stood out to me because I just recently read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd and really enjoyed it. I thought that this book had some interesting side characters, however, a lot of them were kind of underdeveloped. I would have liked to have seen more of the side characters. I also had very complicated feelings about Malcolm, and he is our narrator as well. And I don't think it's a huge spoiler to say he is not entirely reliable, but he kind of lets you know that up front. So, books with an unreliable narrator sometimes work for me, sometimes don't. And because of the ending of this book, I wasn't sure whether this really worked for me or not. So I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5. That may be kind of generous because it was probably like a low 4, closer to 3, like 3.5. But it was really like a 4 up until close to the end, and then the ending happened, and I didn't like a lot of what was done, but there was also some ambiguity we discussed in book club, and I was like, oh, if that's the case, then it's definitely, the 4 ranking, and if it's take your word for everything that said, maybe closer to 3, 3.5. So it's just a complicated book, and I have a complicated relationship with it. I do think it's a good time, and I think if you enjoy mysteries and books about literature, you could really enjoy this. Alright, so I'm going to now go into spoiler territory. If you do not want to hear spoilers, go ahead and pop off, and I will see you next time, okay? Going into spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Alright, so one of the complications in the story, I did mention we have an unreliable narrator, which is Malcolm. And he is not a very good person. But we never really know how bad of a person he is. I mean, it's kind of he tells us, but he's also, taking us through the book, and he's really nice and really interesting and fun to hang out with. And then we find out he's murdered at least 3 people. And, in book club, we had a discussion of he might have done all 8 of the murders. He says at the end, he's like, oh, I gave the murderer my initials, but that's just, it's nothing, it's not Freudian or anything. But, some of us wondered if it was. And then, of course, you have the Dr. Shepard. Malcolm compares himself a lot to Dr. Shepard, who is a character in The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. And there's also a blog post made by Dr. Shepard. And all of those things kind of make you question whether Malcolm is being truthful with us as the reader. He admits that he has, memory loss, and he's not even sure about certain things. And I just really have a hard time with the way that the story was written if Malcolm didn't do it, which sounds really dumb. So, in this book, Malcolm had, early in the book we learn this, he had done a strangers on the train murder. His wife had died, and there was a man that she was having an affair with, and Malcolm wanted that man dead. So he hired a guy from the internet, and they did a strangers on the train. I will commit your murder, you commit mine. And that's cool. But if what Malcolm wrote is true, the person who committed his murder was a guy who was in the police department, who later moved to the town Malcolm is in and started stalking Malcolm and trying to be his best friend, and then decided to commit some murders to impress Malcolm. And it just, I don't know, that doesn't really work for me. It was kind of lame. I did not like the explanation for whodunit. I didn't necessarily mind that it was his policeman beer drinking friend, but I just felt like all the reasons and excuses were really contrived. And so I think I like this better if Malcolm is actually the murderer. If he's not the a murderer who, I definitely think he truthfully did the strangers on a train. And then I think that he had a psychotic break when he did that. And after that, has been murdering these people and has made up the policeman as a Fight Club, multiple personality type thing to deal with the fact that he's committing these murders and wants to get caught because he feels bad for the stuff he did. So, and he's not a great guy. We know, even if the policeman is real, Malcolm committed 3 murders. He murdered his wife. He murdered the guy who molested his wife. And he murdered the cop, his friend who was trying to kill his other friends. So, at the very least, the dude is dirty. So, I definitely had some frustrations and issues with Malcolm, and I thought he was a good character. I love what they did in this book. He rescues a cat while he is in committing this murder. The guy has a cat, and Malcolm's all concerned about this cat not having a home, so he brings the cat home to his shop, which is how the policeman kind of finds him, supposedly, is he was on their website and found all these pictures of the cat, and he's like, oh, that's my person that I was supposed to be murdered, and there's the cat that was involved. So, again, I think it's a stretch, and I'm not sure you can tell a a murder from a cat. Like, cats, I'm not saying cats all look the same, okay? I'm not saying that, but I'm saying cats are very similar looking. You wouldn't necessarily be on the lookout for a cat. You might use that as confirmation, and the guy probably did use it more as confirmation than as following him, but still, it's like, it's a cat. It's a cat. Um, and any cat could look like any other cat. And is a murderer really gonna just snatch a cat? But you know, he's good to the cat, and I think that is the big thing that saves him as a character. Like, you can really hate Malcolm because he murders his wife. He, you know, kills this guy in a Strangers on the Train murder, but he is good to this cat. He doesn't seem to care very much about people, but he likes the cat. So I did think that was interesting, and I liked that he took care of the cat, saved the cat, had a relationship with the cat, because otherwise I think he would just be an unlikable character, and I wouldn't have enjoyed this book very much. I did love all of the books that were referenced, and I didn't even care that there were spoilers. Now I want to read all of them and like see what happens, and you know, see how the story plays out in the book. So I definitely plan to like steal from them. We did discuss in steal from the list of books for the library, not to commit murders, let's be clear. I did think we had a discussion in book club about this, that these are maybe not the 8 perfect murders. Like, if we were to pick 8 perfect murders, these might not have been the ones that we would have chosen. So I don't necessarily think it's a perfect list by any means. And I'm curious to how the author came up with these things. Whether he's just a mystery buff who really loved this list, or if he like was Googling 8 perfect murders or perfect murders and found this list and then read the books. I don't know how he came up with it, but it was cool. It was a neat list. I'm definitely curious about the books now. I do like that Malcolm was a deep character, but I would have liked other characters to be better developed. And so many things in this book don't really make sense. You really have to suspend your disbelief. The FBI agent who comes to Malcolm about working with her, she is the daughter of the man he killed. And I think I think that was a stretch. There's just so many things in this book that were a stretch for me, and that I didn't necessarily... I couldn't suspend my disbelief that far for certain things, which I think is where I started having problems once we got to like some of his background, and the FBI agent being the daughter of the guy he murdered, and just there was so much going for it and so good, and then it started taking twists, and I just didn't love the twist it was taking, which is such a shame, because overall this was a really fun and intriguing book, and I had a really good time with it until we started to really get to all the reveals. It's a great premise, it was interesting, then the reveals came along, and I started not enjoying it as much. And like I said, I would have really liked more character development of all the side characters. We didn't get a lot of development from the girl, the FBI agent. At first you kind of think they might become a thing, and obviously that's not what happens. There's very little development from the other FBI agents that get involved. There is very little development of the shop workers who he's friends with, and I would have liked to see a lot more of them. They seem like interesting characters, and they don't really get much of a mention. They exist mostly so that Malcolm can go off and do what he needs to do, which was kind of frustrating, because they were characters who he like gave 1 or 2 really cool traits to, and then that was all we know about them. And then that was true too of his friend who he co-owns the bookstore with, and that friend's wife. These characters could be such interesting characters, but we just didn't spend the time with them. So I definitely felt this book could have had better characters, although I think Malcolm was a well done and interesting and twisty character. I didn't like him, but you're not supposed to like him, so that's fine. I thought the plot was cool. It was a cool idea, cool premise. I didn't necessarily love the way that it was done, as far as by the end with the police officer and his reasons for doing it. I was kind of let down by the mystery itself, if that's what really happened. And then I don't really have much to say about the setting. It's a setting. The bookstore's cool. Love bookstores. So overall, lots of things I liked, a few things I didn't. I didn't dislike them enough to ruin the book, but I definitely could have liked this so much. This could have been a 5-star, like based on the premise and based on the writing. This author has a lot of talent. Like there's so much that I really enjoyed, but then the plot at the end just kind of let it down again, unless kind of reading between the lines in the subtext is real and Malcolm murdered everybody. So yeah, have you read Eight Perfect Murders? What did you think? Have you read the books within the Eight Perfect Murders on the list? Are they any good? Which ones are the best? Which ones are kind of skippable? I would love to hear your thoughts on the ends, but discreetly, just in case anybody would read the comments. Just yes, Dr. Shepard, no Dr. Shepard would be fine. So no Dr. Shepard if you think Malcolm is completely truthful at the end and none of that Dr. Shepard stuff meant anything. Or yes, Dr. Shepard, you think Malcolm really killed everybody and is just deceiving us. So I would love to hear what you think. Please no spoilers in the comments, but tell me what you think without spoilers if you can do so. Alright guys, this has been Jane. I'll see you again next time. Bye.